Yeah,
Try not to
it was
cough
a big
again.
one. This was a big one. This was very highly anticipated. Innistrad was a very popular set, and Shadows proved to be just as, if not more popular, just because the popularity of Magic is greater. We had a full house for most of the weekend. Uh, One thing that was great about that is getting the 50 or higher attendance to stay
Nice.
pro advanced. Because Wizards of the Coast has different tiers for stores, and the top tier you need a minimum 50 person attended tournament. I think it's within 6 months. They
12
check.
months.
Is it 12 months? Okay. All
Yeah.
right. Okay. So yeah, that was fantastic. We barely fit everybody. We had our first Saturday pod. We had 52 players, and I had forgotten weeks ago that I okayed another event, the Game of Thrones Living Card Game Store Championship, and literally came up on my radar through Facebook the night before, and I'm like, oh crap. So I had to dig in through my storage, find every chair I could possibly find, and make our game room as efficient as possible, and it worked out. We were very lucky. It did work out, but yeah, that's a really important part of it. I think is keeping track of all your events properly, and I'm definitely getting better at that because I started using Google Calendar. Any kind of remote calendar app is a great tool because you can access it from anywhere, and then you can upload it on your website, so you're seeing everything that everybody else is seeing. And you can keep track of everything that way. Unless, of course, you forget to put it on the calendar, like I did. Um, so I guess not double scheduling your events is probably a good pro tip. And I mean, personally, I'm a little overwhelmed with it because I'm sort of a one-man shop, and I schedule everything. And I have part-time employees that help with with the customers and stuff, and some of them run events as well. I should probably delegate more with that, but it's hard for me to do that. And but otherwise, there's the basics, right? You need to advertise well in advance. I believe in advertising at least a month ahead. I put up the information on my website, goes up on Facebook, of course. I pay for the boosting on Facebook because that's super important to get seen.
Have you noticed that makes a difference?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I remember we talked about that. I believe on my
It
interview.
gives you
But
really detailed demographics too, as who's interacting with
yeah,
the post.
it targets really well to exactly who you want, and it works. So you should not be afraid to pay money to advertise on Facebook. Absolutely not. Yeah. Anybody else want to add anything? There's lots to add. So
How did your pre-release go, Travis?
We also hit our 50, barely. I was really glad to see Magic return. For a long time, Magic's been playing fourth or fifth fiddle to our other games. My Dice Masters, my Force of Will, my Pokemon, my Hero Clicks have all been running at the same or higher numbers for attendance than Magic has. And we got back to our 50 because we dropped below Advanced Plus to Advanced. We hit our 50 people. And then yesterday for F&M, we had quite a few people. Our Standard didn't fire, but that makes sense. People haven't had cards very long. But Draft had a big crowd. EDH had a big crowd. It was just really good to see Magic return because we have more of a casual player base. And the $300 deck entry level that has been running around for the last few months has really killed off my players. So it was really good. We didn't do as well as we were hoping. Past our midnight event, we saw our two 9 a.m. ones didn't fire. We combined them. We had some fun. But the rest of the events, we saw about 18 people per event, and we were hoping for more than that on those. But
Yeah, and for us in general, I would say it was the same thing. We saw definitely this was much bigger than Oath or the previous set as far as pre-release, but it's difficult to. It's not record-breaking for us. I think our biggest pre-release event was over 100 people, 110, something like that. But
Return to Replica?
I don't probably,
That's
you
what I
know,
was
the
thinking
big thing.
too.
Yeah.
There's that, and there's level of competition, right? There's a lot more stores, so no matter what you do, schedules or things like that, you have a more diffuse player base. So we did hit that 50 mark, which is good in at least a couple of those events. But we do 6, right? So what we seen that was interesting is that our popularity shifted, so we had less people than we did before in the midnight pre-release, which is something we do every Friday night / Saturday morning, and it shifted. I think to the 10 a.m. was one of our more popular ones, in the Sunday events too, which normally are fairly lower attendance. And I don't know if that's because other stores weren't doing it at that time, or for some reason it panned out better for customers, or they just don't want to do midnight anymore. I don't know, but there was a shifting of the number of players in these time slots more than anything else. There was an increase in players, and we had the same thing, Travis. Our EDH was well attended on Friday. Booster draft was off the hook as far as how many people showed up, and we got 2 people for standard, which is pretty typical when a new set release. What we tend to see is actually standard goes up as we're getting towards the pre-release as far as attendance, and our draft numbers drop, and then when the actual set starts hitting, that's when you get a big boost in drafts, and kind of choose into the other formats.
Yeah. Yeah, we did 6 events as well. We always do 6 events. We do the midnight. We do 2 on Saturday, 2 on Sunday, and then we do a 3rd one on Sunday. And this is unique to us, just for kids. It's 14 and under. We do have a weekly Sunday kids workshop, and so we do the pre-release for them as well. And they get their own game day as well. And they seem to be really appreciative of that. It's so they sometimes outnumber the main events. I think we had over 30 this weekend.
Nice.
And kids are a great demographic to invest in, because those are all future customers. And
well, and that's so you took an approach sort of like the Pokemon thing, right, where you segregated a bit of the age ranges. That's actually a really good idea, because there could be an intimidation factor there of like, hey, I'm gonna go play with a grown-up kind of situation, versus like, I know people will be in my age group. That's excellent, actually.
Yeah.
So one of our 9 a.m. is also youth, but we actually saw our youth show up at midnight. We were pushing really hard for the midnight. Most of our customers knew that we had dropped below the 50+ marks, so they kind of all bandwagon together or pulled together to help us hit that. So most of my kids showed up at midnight with their parents. So
Nice.
Wow.
Interesting.
Lucky kids.
Yeah.
Get to stay up that late.
But
I
I
found
wanna-
something.
No, go ahead, finish.
Okay, going back to running the 6 events, I think I'm going to have to stagger my events differently. I've been doing them 12 o'clock start time and 4 o'clock start time, because I don't want the day to be that long. But when it comes down to it, the 4 o'clock goes to fire, and there's still people in the main event who want to play in the second event. So I think I need to stagger them a bit farther apart. Maybe start the other one an hour earlier, and the other one a bit later. And there was actually some guys. Well, one of the guys was, the last pre-release. He was really upset that we had overlapping events, and he's like, "I'm never coming here again, because I can't go to both pre-releases on the same day." And and then so this pre-release, him and his friends were not there. So not that we had problems with numbers, anyways, but and something we do traditionally, because we do have pre-release packs left over, and we usually do. And there's everyone comes out of everywhere. Do you have any left over? Do you want to sell them? And I think that's a big waste of investment personally. So what we do is we offer our release event. So today's event, instead of just a regular sealed deck, we offer the pre-release packs again, and that makes it special. Gives people another chance to do the pre-release. Maybe they couldn't make it that weekend, but it's a good way to use up the pre-release product instead of just cracking them open or selling them.
Yeah, we do the same thing actually. The launch party, which Wizards doesn't do anymore, but it's still popular for us. So we do a couple of drafts and a sealed, with two sealed, one with regular packs and one with pre-release packs. So people just have to make a choice which event they want to go into, basically. But I wanted to touch for a moment on what Wayne was talking about, in as far as overlapping events. So we have a relatively big space. I think our maximum capacity is 120 people. Once we move, it'll be even more than that. But there is a constant juggling of things going on because Magic can be hit or miss, right? If you have Oath and you're getting an event that barely fires with like 12, 16 people, it's one thing. But you have to plan what happens when you're going to get 50, 60, right? So that's definitely a challenge as an event organizer to look at your space and figure out what can I comfortably do. Also, staffing wise, what can I do to make sure that I have the right people here that can make the event fire on time? Because when you have multiple things going on and it never fails, even though on our website there is a way for you to literally schedule an event, so we reserve a table for you, right? You just go there, you click on it, fill out a quick form. A lot of people just decide to show up. And I hate to turn anybody away, but those are usually the first ones that have to be turned away, because it's like, look, you want to play a game right now, but I have an event that fires at 1 o'clock, and I have no idea, is it going to be 10 people, 20 people? Because what I find usually, we get about 10% pre-registration, and then the rest 90% shows up at the door, right? Even though we have things in place to try to estimate how many people are we going to have coming in, it's always a total crapshoot.
Do you guys cap your rounds? I mean, do you play out
Yeah, I was curious about that too.
full rounds, or do you cap at 3 or 4?
We don't do more than 4. We sometimes do 3. This past weekend, one of my employees decided to just keep it at 2, so he could leave early, which, he said all the players were fine with that. I'm like, oh. And of course, it came back and validated because it needs to be more than 2 rounds. So
Right. Yeah.
that pre-release didn't count, which is probably going to hurt us for our numbers, because Wizards, of course, looks at your attendance, and they base your product for the next pre-release on, a few pre-releases back. So that's going to catch up with us.
We do cap. We usually 4 is the magical number we found. There's a number of reasons why what Wayne was talking about. We want to try to have as little overlap as possible. There'll be some people that are like, oh, it's round 3 and I don't think I can make the top 8 or whatever, not get any extra prizes, so I'm just going to drop and go play in the other event. But we try to minimize that overlap, and one of the ways to do it is you cap it. Plus, at midnight, 1 hour to build your deck, 4 hours, that's 5 hours, assuming the event starts exactly at midnight, and you always have the late person that shows up, right, and et cetera, et cetera. You're looking at getting out of there 6 to 7 a.m. at least. So,
Yeah, and 100-person tournament at midnight doing full rounds is ridiculous. Like, I've done that before, and I vowed never to do that
really
again.
enjoy it. We cap at 4 for midnight, but my old store that I used to play at played the full rounds. I don't know why, but getting out of an event at 10 a.m. is awesome.
It might have a factor to do with your age too. I'm good.
Yeah, I'm so lucky. I got an employee that he stays up really, really late anyways. So for him to come in at 5 p.m. and leave at 5 in the morning for the midnight release, I'm really lucky to have him. And he does it on his own. I leave him around 7 o'clock, and he takes it until 5 in the morning by himself, and he always does a really good job. And our player base is really cool too, so we don't have to worry too much about them.
For us, we have a good number of employees. We have 10 now, so it helps with that rotation. And we have the store manager. She's a vampire. She will literally come out when the sun sets, basically, kind of situation. So it's good that that's what she likes to do. But there's still a lot to be said about, like, if you're coming in for a shift, there's also legalities, right? I believe in Nevada you got to have an 8-hour break at least. Otherwise, that shift is considered a whole shift, and now you're starting to pay overtime for that whole duration of the shift. And it gets incredibly. I don't know how it is in Canada, but it can get incredibly expensive. You have to sit there.
It's 12 hours.
Gotcha. I don't look at pre-releases as money makers necessarily. They're not really there. Events in general for us are more getting people excited about the games and advertising, right? But by that same token, if you're bleeding money out the nose, you can't keep on doing events like that. It's gonna eventually catch up to you.
I guess that's another good follow-up question. So how do you pay out? Pre-releases are a little bit different from your standard tournament, right? So how do you kind of break down the prizes to get people excited?
Oh, we just give out the standard 2 packs per player. I'm a firm believer that the pre-release is already a pretty damn special event, and people come out from all over the place. People who never come out to the pre-release. I mean, we're in a huge city too. We have a huge population density, so you know, every pre-release that runs in Toronto is well attended, as far as I know. Yeah, I guess that's all.
For us, we do everybody. Last place 2 gets 2 packs, right? Doesn't matter. So you're kind of coming in as a winner, and then we take 1 pack added to the prize pool for each player that enters, and sort of pay out. It really depends how many people are in that event. If there's only, like, 20, we're probably just going to pay out the top 4, right? A little extra packs, basically. But we just do packs. We don't do store credit on pre-releases. We try to keep it. To me, the pre-release is a pretty casual event. It's fun, it's exciting, but it's not a grinder. It's not a PPTQ or a PTQ, right? We do tend to not have a lot of the very competitive players that show up for that because we're not giving out a box to first place. We're still putting out a ton of prizes. They're just going all across the board versus all going to first, second, or whatever. Not.
Yeah, much flatter payout.
Yeah. Sorry, I got Travis. I just have more to add to my answer. I kind of blanked, and that's why I finished so shortly. So, two packs per player, but we also give out door prizes every round, which are sometimes packs, sometimes deck boxes, play mats, stuff like that. We always have well, not always, but the last few we've had a feature table, and usually the feature table is reserved for like the top players. It's kind of a big deal, and because we're so focused on casual, we switched around. We always put the last place pairings at the feature table, and then the winner of that match gets a booster pack. So that lets the people who on the bottom actually try and win something. We also spread out our prize pool a lot. Like, you just, in a four-round tournament, you just have to go 2-0, and you get at least a pack. So the top doesn't get as much, but I really prefer spreading it out to as many people, because I get that 1 pack and it makes them a lot happier. And yeah, it is a casual event, like John was saying. It's very casual centric.
So we do ours a little bit differently. We do a higher pay-in, $30, but we provide food. So we do pizza. For the midnight one, we do breakfast burritos. For the morning ones, sandwiches for lunch and stuff like that. And then we do a prize round 3. So no matter where you're at, round 3, you're facing somebody that's pretty comparable, and you have a chance. And it means that most everybody comes up with something. This year we did play mats. We got some custom play mats made, and round 3 was a play mat round. So half the people walked away with a $20 playmat. The smaller event that didn't fire, the 2 9 a.m. ones that didn't fire, we just gave everybody a playmat. And then with cutting it, it does flatten prizes a lot anyway. You're giving out to a lot more people because still a lot more of the crowd is in prize pool at that point. We've looked at going to something closer to 1 pack per player and then distribute the remaining pack among the winners, but we haven't made that switch yet, so that may happen next time. The prize round and the food is really where we flatten prizes, though.
Yeah, so that's interesting. You said you're on the higher end. I would say that the $30 is about pretty much what I see all around. That's what we do it at. If you sign up early, like before the Monday before, you get a $5 discount. But for the most part, I've seen 30 across the board.
We had 15 in our area.
Holy cow! Well, that's I guess if you're gonna just give away the bank,
a loss leader.
That sounds desperate.
30 is literally twice what you could have been doing it at.
That devalues and cheapens the product. I think that's terrible in every aspect.
So fundamentally, it could be somebody trying to get to that 50 number. Who knows what the motivation is?
That was what they were trying to do. Yeah. The judge I have on staff does judge events for me. He warned me. He's like, hey, just so you know, you're going to see them doing 15. They're trying to hit their 50-person mark.
Did they do it? Just curious.
They did.
They did it?
Well, I hope so. In Estrad.
Yeah, I'd hope so. But
wow.
I kind of like your idea more, rather than discounting really deep. Kind of just
add value,
get the bandwagon going, and really kind of get your players involved. And be like, let's make it happen.
I mean,
I did forget one more thing. Right? While I was on the subject of prizes, one thing that we do, it's so we get the packs a day or two early, right? And what we do is we sit there and we Ziploc bag each one of the packs. So the Ziploc bag is for two reasons. When they are done, now it's a little different because you get sort of deck boxes almost with your pre-release packs, but before you had nowhere to put the bags, right? So then, and the packs, so your cards. So the Ziploc bag was an easy way to put your name on it because it's got that writing band on it, and just turn it in at the counter before you go outside to smoke a cigarette or do whatever you're gonna do, right? Kind of situation. But it was also for, we put a Woot prize card in there, and it will be things like chips, soda, a pack, a deck. That's how we get rid of all our promotional playmats that come in. That, you know, if you any distributor you talk to these days, they'll send you, if you select them as the pre-release. We've gotten a fridge before. We've gotten some distributors offer chairs. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff. The most common thing tends to be accessories, right? Playmats and stuff like that. And they're unique. They're different. So we just give them away in those Woots. We also include a coupon that basically has our upcoming Magic events on it. And the backside usually has a coupon that's good for $5 off a fat pack when the set releases, or a set of the intro decks, you know, buy 4 get 1 free, or something like that, to kind of get a sort of comeback, right? I mean, so you play in the pre-release, come back on release day, and, you know, get some extra goodies.
I like it.
Good ideas, yeah.
All right. So, what about events other than a pre-release? Like, what is it? Like, a pre-release is kind of different. It's special. It's pretty unique. It's casual focused.
They send you decorations too. I don't know who put together the. I put together the Avacyn Angel. That was tough. But they also sent like about 20 of these paper lanterns.
The lanterns were a pain.
Yeah, I put one together, and I'm like, I'm not putting these all together and hanging them up because no one's gonna like care really. I might eventually do that just to decorate the game room, but. Yeah, you can go all out with decoration, or you can do nothing. I've never seen a difference in whether people enjoy the event or not based on how it's decorated.
Here in Vegas, it's all about the glitz, so yeah, we go all out. I mean, we even dug into our Halloween supplies and brought out some stuff that was relevant, right? I mean,
nice, yeah.
You know, we had this thing where you take a picture with Avacyn, you swap her face with her, and you get a discount on your to the Gatewatch packs because we really don't want them anymore. Yeah, so you can play it up. I've seen some stores do the whole. We had togas during the now I can't remember the name of the set. The Greek one.
Theros.
There you go. During that block, we were wearing togas and things like that. You know, so you can doll it up. I found that that's sort of hit or miss. Some of the more competitive players, which again we don't get a lot of those in our store. Not for the pre-releases at least. They're just there to play Magic, and to them that's just, well, what is going on? Well, I don't care about this, right? But the kids love it, and a lot of the people that are more casual definitely get into that kind of stuff.
You asked about other events. We run about 20 events a week. I've got 2 different game rooms, one on the main floor that's just tiny. It's where I'm sitting now. It holds about 12 people. And then I've got a huge game room, seats about 165 if I ever got that many chairs and tables. I don't have that many chairs and tables, so it really only seats 64. But we always have a lot of stuff going on, and then we usually run some sort of big event every weekend. This weekend it's Dice Masters. Last week, of course, was Magic. I think 2 weekends from now, it's the Pokemon pre-release. There's always some event going on. The way I can do that is I've got 5 employees, and they run most of the events for me. The guy that runs most of my events is out right now, so I've been picking up a lot of that, but we're always got somebody scheduled to run something big.
So, and I mean, talking about Magic and CCGs, those are different requirements and constrictions than other types of events, right? Events can be a mixed bag. Miniature tables eat up a lot more space, so you can fill up your space a lot quicker with a less amount of people. If you get a 30-man miniature event, that's a fairly large event, and you're talking a 4x6 table, so that's 15 tables, right? That takes up a lot of room. The big challenge for us in our current space has been that we're going to have to educate our customers when we move to the larger location that it's okay to come in if there's a Magic pre-release. Because before, when you have 90 Magic players in a pre-release, you're pretty much squeezing out everything else you're doing when your capacity is 120, right? I mean, there's no way. And there's also a certain level of noise that the board gamers don't enjoy, or the role players want their 4x6 tables so they can all sit around there. Those are definitely something to consider when you talk about running good events. Is look at what your crowd is and understand that certain ones don't mix. Now, if you're lucky enough that you have a store like Travis that has 160, right, or whatever, you could probably segregate those groups enough that it won't be a problem. But
noise is still an issue.
Right.
Noise is
So,
a huge issue.
well,
Yeah,
and we ran this was not on site, but we partnered up with a company out in England. They were holding like a $100,000 Magic tournament in a cooperation with a couple of other events, right? And they rented a room at the Venetian, which was an incredible venue, but it's a very large room. But here's the problem: we had Magic players, we had chess players, we had Scrabble players. The chess players were complaining because the Scrabble players were making too much noise when they were moving their tiles around, right? And so you gotta, it's things that you don't think about, but when you're looking at a different varied group of events, and like Travis, we do a lot of different events every day, and mixing the groups sometimes is a challenge on itself. And sometimes it's best to figure out which ones just don't interact and keep those events on separate days, and you'll be better off for it.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I've run across that myself. Another mistake we made this past weekend, again, this is me juggling all these events, is I had to cancel an X-Wing tournament last minute, which was obviously quite upsetting. People were really looking forward to going, and I had canceled it ahead of time. But then I forgot about this Facebook post I made in January, which listed all of our events, and people still thought we had it happening. So as a makeup, and I think it's really important to make it up when you make a mistake like that. This weekend I'm running the event, a makeup event for it, and I'm not charging any admission and just giving out all the prize kits for free. So yeah, another
where you want
mistake.
to be, but you got to keep the customers happy, right?
Yeah.
No, ideally you don't make the mistake in the first place. It's good. It's good that you're not doing any charging, right? And I get it. You made a mistake. You pay for it. The reality though is you'll still have somebody upset because like I asked for the day off, and now I can't get the other day off, right? So, we got when we did our. Here's another example of how it's hard to please everybody sometimes. Our regional championship, we found that when we moved our X-Wing tournaments from 11 o'clock in the morning to 6 o'clock at night, we actually doubled, almost tripled our attendance. So I guess for whatever reason, people like to come to my store at 6 and leave at midnight or whatever, and I'm done with X-Wing. So we wanted to do the regional at that time too, which meant the guys got out of there 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. You know what? Everybody had fun. Everybody at the end was just so giddy and tired that they were just giggling over everything, and it wasn't like this mega competitive kill everything kind of thing. But we did get a lot of people are like, well, I can't come because at 6 you need to move it to 11, and there was this sort of indignation because we didn't do so. We felt that we had to listen to the majority of our customers, not however vocal minority, and you will probably still get somebody no matter what, because it's not at midnight, it's at 9, or vice versa, it's not at 9. So, I guess as long as your events are being attended and you have a growing event, you're good to go. So that's something we struggle with.
Well, no matter what, there's no way you can please everybody with your schedule. There's always going to be somebody who's going to be upset that they can't come. It's just a fact of, limited time.
Mm-hmm. And in this town, it's difficult because you got people that start working at 1 o'clock in the morning, or just get off work at 1. So the biggest crowd is a little difficult to predict. It's not like we have Saturdays and Sundays are actually big days for people, especially if you're in the service industry, to make your tips to work, right? So they're not necessarily off. Weekend events are big, but in this town, not so much as compared to other ones, maybe.
24-hour game store. Come on.
There was one in Phoenix. I'm not sure how well that went, but
yeah, funny segue into that article that you posted, John, about the hobby center. I think.
Yeah. So it was an article about they were talking about like how we don't need brick and mortar stores and we should go towards just event centers, which you know, there's opinions on that. We can probably do a show on that one too, Tom.
I think so.
But
yeah.
That article discredited itself by not using spell check.
That's what I thought too.
What are you gonna do?
Go the internet.
How do you fill it when you're not running tournaments?
Well, that's the model is a club. They don't sell anything. You pay a subscription fee, and that's how you pay for the rent, right? Like I said, I think it's definitely a subject for a show if that's a viable model or not. But anyways,
yeah, send me a link to the article. I'd like to read it.
About, you know, we talked a little bit about what makes a good event, right? I mean, we touched a little bit on what not to do, right? And with that, one of those was making sure that you don't overlap events that aren't necessarily compatible with each other. Another big one, at least in my book, is make sure that the event starts on time. I mean, that's a big sticking point for a lot of our customers, right? For whatever reason, I mean, you're here, you want to have fun. You don't want to be waiting. And so the difficulty there sometimes lies in what happens when you get the guy that calls you 10 minutes before the event starting saying, hey, I'm late, can you hold the event, right? You hold it, you keep going. For something like, if we talk about specifically about CCGs, something like a standard tournament, right? For Magic, you can drop in at any point in time. You can drop out at any point in time. It doesn't matter. You don't affect the whole group. But something like a draft becomes a bit of an issue because I have to have 8 late people to start a totally separate pod in order to do it. So for us, it really depends on the event. But in general, we try to make it a point to start as close as possible to the starting point. And that means, you know, when you're looking at things, if your event starts at 10 a.m. and your store opens at 10 a.m., maybe your personnel needs to be here at 9:30 versus exactly at 10, which I've seen sometimes happen, right? I mean, you get there and there's a line outside the door. You're still trying to count in your till. I don't understand how that works, but it does happen. So,
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I think the game room itself is wherever you're holding the event is important. So, you know, I'm lucky enough that I have a large enough game room. We can hold our events at my store. You know, we got 1,400 square feet. We can seat up to 72 people, I believe, which has always been okay. I think only the Return to Ravnica pre-release pushed us over our capacity with a couple people standing upstairs at the counter. But I think wherever you hold it is really important. You know, you need to have available and clean bathrooms. You know, you need to have. I think you need somewhere where somebody can get something to drink. I think that's important, more important than food. And you know, we sell pop, and we have like a reverse osmosis water filter, so people can fill up water bottles. I think you know, we got air conditioning. There's air conditioning in the room, which is super important. You know, if the room's too hot, too uncomfortable, nobody's going to have a good time. It's not going to smell very good either. Yep. You know, and having enough space. You know, I could probably fit more than 72 people, but then it would be uncomfortably crowded. So I think where the setting for your event, no matter what kind of event it is very, very important. And when you go further up to like you know, Pro Tour qualifiers, even way up to Grand Prix, I mean, can you imagine what they have to all the things they have to consider? And you know, when you go to a large event like a Grand Prix, you can definitely tell when things are being run really well, when they have enough space, when it's organized well enough. You know, having enough staff to help run the event is also very important. If you're understaffed, everybody's going to feel that too, and there's going to be more frustration. It's better to overinvest in an event and make sure it runs well than it is to just try and squeak by with what you got and run a terrible event, and that will impact your reputation, and you will probably see less attendance in the next event that you do.
I was going to definitely touch on the staffing as well. You know, 30-person event, you can have somebody. I mean, 30 persons kind of that threshold where the person running it can be in it. You get to that 32-person mark, you know, where you're running the full rounds. The person that's running the event can't be one of the participants. You know, you can't just have your Magic judge playing the pre-release if there's 50 people. He's got to be actively running around, answering questions, helping people fill out decks, or not fill out decks, but follow rules and move to the next stage and make sure people are on time, because we talked about how time's an issue, and if there's not somebody actively monitoring the time and telling people, hey, we're at time, you guys are at turns, entering the results and stuff, because it takes a long time to put all those results in, and if they're in the event, they can't start entering results until their match is finished, and if they're one of the last matches, you're adding another 10-15 minutes between rounds. You know, if you're at 50-person event, you probably need 2 people there just to run the event, because at that point you need somebody that can run back and forth between the game room and the retail area and get, or the back room or wherever, fill out things that have, I don't know, happened. You know, grab drinks and stuff if needed. There's always something that comes up that needs attended to. So
yeah, you're still operating a business, right? So
yeah,
there's not just the event going on.
Then there's the person behind the register too. Yes.
Yeah.
So when you know, that touches on 2 points: the choice of venue and back to the staffing, right? So for us, when we've done PTQs in the past, we've actually chosen to hold them off-site. We wanted a completely separate event for a number of reasons. For us, it's back to that, the mixing of things. Most of our events tend to be on the casual side, and the more competitive, we wanted to isolate it on purpose. We wanted to have a separate location that literally just took care of that. So when you do that, you remove a lot of the requirements of the business, right? You don't have to worry about operating a cash till, other than if somebody's there wanting to buy some supplies or trade in the single or things like that. We even went so far as to renting out dealer tables so that other people can handle the singles, because all we wanted to concentrate on was running the event. So when you look at where you're hosting it, that makes a difference on your personnel and the requirements, right? The nice thing about hosting it like at a hotel, like we did, is I don't have to worry about the chairs. They have them. I don't have to worry about. I just have to make sure they're doing it the right way, right? They're setting it up correctly the way we asked them. Now, in the store, that changes the equation, because now you're dealing with, you're right, you have a store to run too. And we try to mitigate that a little bit, because we try to always have somebody that's, their sole role is to judge the event, not to run it, but to judge it. We'll usually have another person who, in between customers and things like that, is running the event. In other words, he's entering the results and stuff like that. And you have cashiers. And I understand this is like, for most stores, probably an inordinate amount of people. But when we have about 70 to 100 people in the store playing in different events and customers coming in and shopping, we want to make sure that all of them are having a good experience. If you have less than that, you can probably make do with less people. But we do get the comment a lot from judges. This happens a lot, obviously, with Magic, because that has more sort of rigid and organized judging system. They love judging here because all they have to do is judge. We're not asking them to enter. We even go to the point of if they give out warnings, we'll enter them for them. And all our staff is trained to use. And for those people who don't know what the VR is, the Wizards event reporting system, it's the software they use, right? So yeah, it's important to make sure you're adequately staffed. That makes a big difference. And then it's important to factor in the cost of that staff, right? When you look at an event, are you running an event because you want to advertise, you want to sort of boost attendance or whatever not, or are you running an event because you're trying to make money on it? And if you are, then you really have to look at what all the costs are, not just the entry fee and the prizes you're giving out.
You know, every event is going to be different. You know, we talked a lot about Magic events, but we've got International Tabletop Game Day coming up, and that's going to require a different set of requirements than judge. I'm going to have a half dozen people just sitting around demoing games all day. I don't know if you guys are trying to run anything for that. I know you guys aren't running the weekend after that free comic book day because you guys don't have comic book stores. I'm looking at a completely different staffing system set up for that. And one of the things that makes a good event, I'm already planning all these. We've already sat down and figured out how many people we need. How many people do I have on staff? What's the difference? Those things, you can't just throw together a good event on the last minute. You've got to plan out ahead of time. You've got to figure out what your requirements really are, and you have to be prepared for them.
Okay. And interesting enough, you mentioned International Tabletop Day, right? We do it every year. This year, we were chosen to be one of the partner stores. There's 300 of these in the United States right now. But that is, you're right, a completely different set of requirements. But it touches on a point that's a bit frustrating for us. We like to plan things out. We like to plan things out well in advance. Something like Tabletop Day, our staff will be running demos, our staff will be running events, but we also have a lot of volunteers that do things on International Tabletop Day in our store. When things are sort of like last minute from the publisher, it becomes really an issue for us because it becomes hard to sort of incorporate and do that stuff. And we worked with, like, Yellow's been in the store before, AEG, et cetera, et cetera. These are all great guys. Some of the other publishers, sometimes we get hey, we want to run this weekend. Do you want to do it? And we're like, Magic pre-release weekend, Magic launch weekend, Pokemon pre-release weekend. It seems like maybe they don't consider these things, and for the most part, we try to be as accommodating as possible. But part of running a good event sometimes is when to say no. I'm sorry. If I run this event right now, I'm gonna give everybody a really bad experience, and I'd rather not do it. It's a difficult call to make, but we'd rather do that than just kind of jostle something together at the last minute and it just sort of falls apart at the seams.
Yeah, I think timing is everything. Here in Toronto, for example, our game day lies on the same weekend as Toronto Grand Prix, so we're really up against a huge competitor as far as Magic players go. So it has to be aimed at people who are more casual, who are not interested in spending that much money on an event, etc. And I mean, the promos are really sweet for this game day anyway, so that might draw some people in just for those. And that's just an unfortunate thing that happens. I mean, but it's important to look ahead to when these events are happening, when you're planning your events, and not to double book. Like, I mean, in Toronto, there was like a dozen other stores running events, and trying to find a day that doesn't coincide with someone else's event is just about impossible, especially Saturdays. I don't even try for Saturdays anymore for most events. I try to do all my big events on Sunday just because it's a less busy day. So I guess timing is pretty important too for when you're planning your event, running your event.
Yeah, only so many weekends in the year.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting point, Wayne. We run into the same difficulty, right? We really do try to work with our local competitors as far as, like, I mean, it does me no good to host an X-Wing Store Championship unless somebody else 5 miles from me is doing it. But here's the problem we're running into. We have more and more stores coming online, and oddly enough, the number of weekends and the number of days in a given month are the same. So it's starting to happen. I mean, we just can't, like, hey, you want to do X-Wing on Tuesday, I'll do it on Wednesday. The reality is there's 7 days in the week, and when there's 15 stores trying to run X-Wing, we're going to double up. But, it's funny because sometimes the customers perceive that as like, oh, why'd you schedule on this day? You're trying to put those people out of business. And that's really not the case. The reality is there's only so many days, and if there's more stores, end the story, somebody will overlap.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm hearing is basically major focus on the fundamentals. Like, if you want to run an event, and a good event, you need the basics, right? Like, if the store is not clean, it's not going to be great. If it's too hot, no one's going to have a good time. And then also know what your goals are for what you're trying to accomplish, because it does change in how you're going to approach it. Like, if you're trying to make money in the event, it's going to be run differently than if you're trying to advertise to sell product. If you're willing to break even or even take a loss on something, it's going to be a different kind of event. You should staff differently. And then,
Plan well in advance.
Yeah. Pay attention to the schedule and make sure you've got everything you need way ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
I think that just about sums it up for this particular thing. I mean,
the only other thing we didn't really talk about was we talked about events, but mainly focused on, like, tournaments. So, like, events actually make up a lot of, like, that's a big topic, right? Like, tabletop game day is not really a tournament. It would be an event. It's something unusual. Like, there's more than just organizing FNMs and GPTs and stuff like that for events.
That's actually a really big point. You do, I mean, maybe in some of the bigger markets you can have a store that just caters to competitive events. but I'm in a town of less than 100,000. I have to, if I want a robust community, I have to have events that aim at different markets. And knowing which market is which one, a PPTQ is a Magic competitive event. A pre-release is a Magic casual event. There's definitely some of those already built in, but we try to actually do that with every event that we run on a regular basis. All of our weeklies, we try to have both a competitive and a casual scene. A lot of those we do with leagues, and leagues you get points for coming in, playing for fun, teaching new players, playing with people that haven't played much before, and you can earn prizes just from league. And then tournaments are for the competitive players, and they earn prizes for the competitive play. And having both of those gives both groups a reason to come in. We schedule them at the same time or overlapping or right after each other so that they can interact, that there's something where somebody can jump from one to the other if they want. But yeah, you have to have both casual and competitive events if you want a healthy community for a game.
Sure. And one thing to note too would be ready to explain when some. One of the things we sort of struggle a little bit with is we have different types of events, right? I mean, and when our competitive Magic player stumbles upon our Monday League, which is pretty much a casual come down, you score points by doing achievements, and it could be anything from like bringing us cookies to building a zombie deck and then it's scored over a period of 4 to 6 weeks. What ends up happening though, we get a lot of customers that walk in and they're like, oh, I heard there's a tournament tonight. Well, and then maybe they're disappointed when that tournament isn't what they think it is. No, we're not pairing anybody. You can come in and play as many or as few games as you want, right? It's a completely casual event. We had the same thing happen with Rebellion, which is a Star Wars board game that came out a couple of weeks ago from Fantasy Flight Games. All my X-Wing players are like, so when you gonna start running tournaments? I'm like, but it's like a risk type game that takes 3 to 4 hours to play, and it's not a competitive. I guess it's competitive in the sense that somebody wins, but it's not like a competitive style game where we're going to go from round to round to round. So when you do events, and especially when you have a variety of events, right? I mean, if we have a costume contest during our Halloween board games, horror-themed board games, right? It is an event. It requires a different type of planning and a different type of marketing, right? All we're really doing with that is people come in, they might be playing games, or they might just come in to get their pictures taken, then we throw the pictures up on Facebook, right? Different requirements for different types of events, but more importantly, back to the original concept, be prepared to have to explain, because a lot of people just, when they think event, they just think, okay, I'm going to be paired up with another person. Whoever's got the best made sword wins the costume contest, right? Kind of situation. So,
and I just wanted to touch on one final point, what Travis was saying about having a different range of events, competitive and casual, because that is very, very important and translates directly to your customers. Because I'll give you a casual customer base and a competitive customer base. They buy completely different things. So if you're trying to buy the best, most winning Warhammer army, you're going to buy specific models and concentrate on specific armies. If you're just playing for fun and think the models are cool, you'll buy you'll buy any model as long as it looks cool, and obviously that translates to Magic. Like there's cards that the competitive players will joke about, who would ever buy that, and then you'd have a kid walk in going, oh, that's a cool card, and they'll buy it because in their world it's just a fun, cool card, and they're not thinking in competitive terms. They just love the game and get some enjoyment out of it. So I think that's just a really good point, Travis.
Yeah, different mindset.
Yeah,
different motivations.
Yeah. So I think we're running a bit long. Don't we have another topic?
Yep. I was thinking I actually have the perfect segue for this. I've been figuring this out while we were talking.
Okay.
So running events is about the experience. Ultimately, it's about the player's experience and what that entails. And part of that experience is feeling welcome at a store and feeling like they're not going to be ostracized or ignored or all kinds of negative feelings. You want it to be a positive experience. And recently there was an article written with a very intriguing title.
It was inflammatory, for sure.
Yeah, I believe the title was Tabletop Gaming has a white male terrorist problem. I think that's the title. And yeah, we thought we could have a brief discussion on what this thing brings to the table, so to speak. So who wants to take a stab at it first?
Well,
Anybody?
I mean, sorry,
Go,
John.
Wayne. I know. And
All
no,
right.
no, no. I know you had some feelings about this, so go ahead.
I do. Yeah. Yeah. So first of all, let's talk about the title. The tabletop gaming has a white male terrorism problem. I get it. I understand why she's using that language. I would probably use really strong language too if I had had the same experiences and I wanted to get the attention for this article that it demands and needs. So while that title is going to offend a lot of people, it might put people off, it's also going to cut through all the hundreds of thousands of articles on the internet, and that's kind of what you need to do to cut through all the fuzz out there. So I get the title. I'm not offended by it personally. Yeah, it talks about this woman talks about her past experiences as a gamer and how she's been gaming for a long time and has encountered all these different experiences of inappropriate behavior, sexual assault, etc. Like her,
Pretty terrible stuff overall.
Pretty terrible. Yeah, I mean, her ass was grabbed, and this is this is something that happens everywhere. It's not just in the gaming community, and it's just something that I think is being talked about more and more recently. I know my awareness is fairly recent about this problem. Realizing, wow, the perspective of living life through a woman or a girl is completely different. It doesn't just go, it goes beyond like getting off the bus at night and, feeling a little afraid to walk home alone. I mean, it goes much further than that. I mean, we don't, as guys, especially as guys, we don't have to look around our back so much. We don't have to worry about being surrounded by a bunch of people who are stronger than us and may want something from us. It's just a completely different world, and I appreciate what she's saying in the article, and I think it's an important topic, and I think the attention it's getting is good because I think people need to think about that in every context of their life. And I don't think the three of us in our shops. I don't think it's really a big problem at our shops. And it could happen though. I mean, it could be happening whether we know about it or not. Because the truth is, when those things do happen, they usually aren't reported. But I think we've all worked really hard to create welcoming, comfortable, safe spaces in our game rooms, in our stores. So we're not seeing this as much, but I can see it being a problem elsewhere. Because it is a problem in every aspect of life, not just the gaming community. So that's my piece so far. I don't know.
Well, I mean, yes, I'm not going to contest in any way, shape, or form that it doesn't happen, and I'm going to go out on a limb and go, yes, women are usually more prone to this, but realistically speaking, it can happen to any gender, right? Or religion, or color of skin, or whatever not. It really has no place in the gaming community or in any community for that matter. I mean, I think one of the reasons why, like Wayne was saying, we don't see a lot of it in our shops is we work really hard to set a tone and sort of like a culture in our store. We don't allow cussing. We don't. We try to keep it as family friendly as possible. Even the choice of music for us sometimes it's a hot debate. Or do we put this song up? Do we not? It's the little things that in the end kind of, even when somebody goes, well, John, why do you care that I dropped an F-bomb? It's just me and you in the store. We literally try to train our customers that that's a no-no no matter what. And because the second you give room for a little bit of that, you've created a loophole or a small possible window where there's times when it's okay. And I really don't feel it is. So when you start with the basics like that, it becomes much harder for those people to feel welcome in our shop. And I'm perfectly okay with that. I have no room for hate. I really don't in any way, shape, or form. So we start by setting that right tone, and we also try to consider our customers equal, no matter what their gender is, or when they walk through my door, they're gamers, and that's fundamentally how I address it. It's literally, you are the same as the next gamer that's coming in here. The only time you're going to be different in my book is if you're a problem child that's making everybody else uncomfortable, and then definitely we have to address it.
I take from this because, like we've talked about, hopefully this isn't ever happening at my shop. Wayne said I'm not there for every conversation. I'm not upstairs in my game room very often, so there's always the possibility something happens. But we have a decent number of women that shop at our store, and I hope that a lot of that reason is that it's a place that they can feel comfortable. What I take from this is I need to look and see, is it as safe of a space as it could be? And if it could be more safe, then it should be more safe. And I think that that's the important part of the article. It's not, oh, we need to step up above the level of harassment that she's had. We need to step it up so that's not happening. We need to look at wherever we're at, and we need to step up. I have different rules than John. Our rules are that your language has to be appropriate for those that are around you, and it is more difficult to police because it does say that when it's just me and you in the shop, the conversation can be different. And I've thought about that and stuff. I do okay with that rule, but I can totally understand why his rule is the way it is. It is much easier to police, and it does create a very different mindset. One of the things about the game store is it's a third space. It's a space that people do feel comfortable in, but it's also not their home space, and it's not their workspace where they have these very strict filters in the way that they interact with other people. And we need to make sure that there's still a filter for these people. This isn't the place where you can just be the most horrible version of yourself that you can be. There still needs to be social filters there, even though you're not at work. And so it's a culture that we have to actively build, and we need to actively make sure that it is where it should be, because those experiences, they don't have to be that bad before they're bad. Nothing has to happen to somebody like what has happened in this article before it's a problem. It can be half of that, it can be a quarter of that, and it's still a problem. And so it's not just if it's that big of an issue, it's if it's an issue at all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think, just to interject a little bit, I think part of the article was that it's not... Some of the experiences that she had were actually the game store, or the owner, or someone behind the counter. That was the problem. And I think that's probably pretty rare. Like I said before, I don't think there's a lot of game store owners who open up a shop thinking they're going to be an asshole. Like, that's not their purpose. That's not what they want. They want to make people happy. I think a lot of the negative experiences are inter-customer, right? Like, it's the gaming community, not necessarily at the stores. But it happens at the store because that's where the community gathers. So I think part of the solution is kind of like the way John approaches it, kind of trying to police and manage it before it becomes a problem. Kind of like so by preventing, or by saying, okay, we don't want any swearing in the shop, not at all. Family friendly. That's the line, right? It's kind of like the broken window theory, where the neighborhood, like, the crime rate will go down if the crime rate will go up if there's like graffiti and people are jumping the turnstiles in the subway and just dodging the quarter, those kinds of things, or broken windows. It creates an environment where it makes it seem like it's okay if people are swearing. If it's just a bit rougher, and then it's almost like a slippery slope to the really bad stuff, right? So how do we, as the game store, who's not necessarily the root cause of the problem, but it's where the problem kind of occurs, how do you approach it and try and find a solution to it, right?
So that actually touches on a couple of things, Thomas, and it's so again back to that culture, right? I mean, and I don't want to tell people that run game stores you're doing it wrong. Realistically speaking, you might have built a whole community that comes to your shop because you play death metal in your shop, and that's to you, that's why you opened the store. You opened the store because you wanted to hang out with your friends, and you wanted to get games at wholesale, back to that clubhouse kind of situation, and we have several of those, right? And so here's the problem though that I see. We call them the Mondays, right? People who were never exposed to gaming, but there's more and more of those coming on board. Things like tabletop with Will Wheaton, The Big Bang Theory. It's expanding this to now more of the mainstream. So you sort of have to make a decision at a certain point. If you want to continue to be the clubhouse, I suppose that's okay. There's nothing wrong with it, right? And I'm not saying that Travis runs a clubhouse. I'll get to the separate game room is a bit of a unique thing too, right? But if you do that and you're hanging out with your friends and you happen to, I don't know, I think you have a right to fly the Confederate flag, but it sends a message, right? I mean, so if that's up in your store, you're setting a certain tone for that. I don't have an issue with it, I really don't. But realistically speaking, that some people do, so you're sort of offsetting yourself and eliminating and making a certain group of the people unfriendly. That being said, I get a lot of criticisms from some people because they're not allowed to take shoes off in my store. They're not allowed to cuss. They're not allowed to play their music as loud as they want, right? So it's a matter of choosing where you want to be. And Travis brought up a point, right? The separate game rooms were something that ever since the beginning of the store, we've always had the game room in the store. It's its own set of logistical problems, and that's a big reason why I'm sorry, guys, you got to be as nice as possible when you're playing in my store, because you are exposed to the rest of the population that's just coming in to buy stuff. You are sort of my face, right, when you're in here playing games. So when you have a separate room, that becomes a lot harder to police, right, Travis? I mean, it's literally one of those, like, you can't be in there 24/7 when somebody drops an F-bomb to go, hey, language, right? So the environments do create the atmosphere. You as a store owner have a lot of say in that, and you have to decide, where do you want to be? What do you want to do? How do you want to run your store? And what kind of clientele do you want to attract?
Yeah. And when, things happen, you have to nip it in the butt right away. You hear a derogatory comment, you hear something, you see something that somebody shouldn't be doing. You gotta put a stop to it immediately and let people know right away that that's not permissible. If you're going to act like that, you're going to say things like that, you need to leave and not be afraid to lose a customer in order to nurture the community that you do have at your store, because your player community is a direct reflection of the type of store you are. And I'm sure we're all very proud of our gaming community. I mean, I love the people who come to my store, and I know when players start coming to my store for the first time, they often tell me, hey, I really like the people playing here, and they have a good time. And it depends. It depends on what kind of a player they are. But some people don't care about that. But I think it's super important. So yeah.
And I think there's also a difference between the store that plays metal music and has a little bit more of an edge to it, and full out bullying, because that's really what it is, right? It's really extreme bullying. That's what the article is describing. But bullying in general is a problem, and that's kind of the gist of it. You can have a store that's a little more edgy, a little more rough around the edges, basically, and still not have that problem. Right? It's not a guarantee, but it's something that you need to consider.
Well, and he says the music, and I'm guilty of this. That has been a problem in my store. I was listening to Marilyn Manson in my store one day. It was, I don't have speakers that run throughout the store, so it's just at the counter. You can only hear it when you go to check out or whatnot. There is a track that came on that was entirely inappropriate while I was not behind the counter, while I was out helping other customers, and it offended a customer. It really offended one of my customers, and rightfully so. It's one of the tracks that I usually skip because it usually offends me. It was it was not a good experience for them. And of course, now I go, okay, this is why even in my personal space, I'm not allowed to listen to this, because, you know, if I had been there, I would have skipped it. Wouldn't have been a problem. But I'm not just sitting behind the counter, staring at the computer when there are customers out. So the music is, you know, for me has switched over to 80s rock, Billy Idol and Queen and stuff when I'm listening. And after hours, I can turn on the more loud music. It's, you know, I'm running a store. I need to be acting like I'm running a store. I'm going to be honest. Sometimes that's it's difficult. At the end of 60 hours, you're wanting to be not just being professional. You want to relax a little, but you can't.
And for everybody out there running a game store, make no mistake, this and handling your personnel are probably the two hardest things you will ever do. Picking out the games that are going to sell, demoing things, these are, in my book, the easiest things to do. But trying to pull in a 30-year-old man into your office and explain to him that while you're playing Pokemon, it's not appropriate to have children in your lap is a difficult thing to do. It really is, especially when in his mind he's not doing anything wrong, right? But when the parents are coming in, you going, what's going on with this person, right? These are tough, especially when, back to that bullying, we had a group of players that got suspended here in Vegas for bullying on Facebook, on social media, right? And if you read their comments after they got suspended, they did nothing wrong. In their book, they were just joking or whatever, you know. But in order for Wizards to step in, this went on for a long time, and it really was pretty bad. But they don't see it that way, right? So you come from different mindsets. In our store back in Flagstaff, we had a gentleman who came in who told me he would never go to competitor store B because he saw a copy of Stoner Flux. We literally, I don't care one way or the other about Stoner Flux. It's a game. That's all it really is. But we keep it under the counter for when customers ask it, just because, yes, some people will get offended by certain materials, right? So
against humanity?
We actually stock Cards Against Humanity because people keep asking it, but we are very specific, and we you know, it's, look, you know what you're getting into, right?
This is not something you sell to a 5-year-old.
No. To be fair, at least the packaging isn't overly offensive, right? I mean, if you look at that on the shelf, you can't really. We just have to be careful when the 12-year-old kid picks it up and wants to buy it because he thinks it's cool. I'm like, I'm not going to sell you this, right? Because mom's going to come screaming at me. So
that's interesting, the Stoner Flux thing, because I'm an advocate for marijuana use, and you know, I've even made announcements in my game room saying, you know, I can't be here today. I'm going off to the Global Marijuana March, something I really believe in, blah, 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 because it's nothing to be ashamed of. It's nothing, you know, there's a difference between things that upset people and that shouldn't upset people, because, I mean, if marijuana upsets you, it just means you don't understand it. You should be more upset about alcohol, for example, like 1,000 times more upset about alcohol. Yet that's everywhere. And just, you know, authentic and honest, and you're doing the right thing, that's going to come through in your shop. I do not tiptoe around stuff that I know there's nothing wrong with it. For example, marijuana. And I even had an argument with a customer, like, oh, it's terrible, blah, blah, blah. She's saying how bad it is for you. And I'm like, actually, it's not that bad for you at all. And actually this, and that. And she just kind of looked at me and didn't know what to say. And, you know, and if I lost her as a customer, I don't care. You know, I'm not going to pretend that it's a bad, terrible thing just to, you know, make her feel more comfortable.
Well, and yeah, and it goes back to your personal beliefs a lot of times. I mean, in the end, the stores are a reflection of who we are and what we do. And for us, since we have such a very group of customers and even employees that work for us, right? We have women that work for us. We have you know, different sexual orientations. But again, it's the decision, Stoner Flux, is not because I personally have anything against marijuana. I really don't. I personally don't like the smell of it, but that's about it, you know. But it was what that perception, unfortunately, and I don't set that in society, is just there for all the wrong reasons. I agree with you, Wayne, right?
But it's up to us to change that perception by not hiding it, by going, hey, there isn't anything wrong with this actually. I mean, like I said, alcohol, way, way worse. If anybody understands drugs and alcohol, they know that alcohol is terrible. But it's okay to drink wine at home with your family, and kids are drinking wine with you in some families, for example. Or the typical, father comes home from work and, cracks open a beer and they're drinking right in front of their kid. Maybe the kid's on their lap and they're watching TV and drinking a beer. And that's okay, apparently, because it's not illegal or whatever, even though legality is kind of in a gray area right now, but it is all going to become legal. And of course, legality doesn't mean anything's right or wrong. It just means those in power are dictating what we can and can't do, because, of course,
opinions.
You can go back in history and see all these things that are illegal that we look back and go, wow, that was so wrong, so wrong. Apartheid.
Sure, and alcohol was illegal, right? I mean, that didn't work very well.
They tried getting rid of that as well. But but I just want to get back to the article as well, because we seem to be talking a lot about bullying, when I know bullying is part of what's in this article, but it's really surrounded around the topic of sexual assault, which is a little stronger of an incident than just bullying.
That's definitely the extreme version.
Yeah, sure. But you don't get thrown in jail for bullying. You get thrown in jail for sexual assault.
And I think the reason that we, I don't have any experience with the sexual assault. So I don't have much I can put in on this. It doesn't happen at my store. I wouldn't allow it to happen at my store. I haven't been around it, so I can't add in anything on that. And that's a good thing, but it's harder to address something this extreme when I personally have no experience with it.
And that's the easiest way to approach is basically to say it is unacceptable in every form.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
It's good that you're not experiencing it. You're not seeing it. I mean, where it becomes our responsibility is when we do see it or we do hear about it. And we got to be on top of it. I mean, if we just ignore it or don't take care of it, then, we're part of the problem. Just like we're part of the problem keeping marijuana as an uncomfortable subject. That whole idea, not to bust your balls, John. I'm just
no, it's fine.
I'm just saying that we need to, it's our responsibility to do something about that. I think this article is really calling out the industry as a whole and saying, do something about that. Don't just laugh it off. If you're this speaks to the whole community. So if you're gaming with people, you're with a bunch of guys. A girl walks by, a guy makes, some sexual remark at her. You don't just be one of the guys that's like, ha ha ha, and you laugh it off. Be the guy who says, hey, wait a minute, that was not cool, okay? That it's gonna really upset her. There's no reason to do that. And so I think it's a call to action. I see that letter as a call to action, just for everybody to be responsible for their actions and to act upon other people's actions when they're obviously not appropriate. Hi.
Hi, Wayne. I just want to say I agree with everything you're saying as a female point of view. I'm leaving. Bye.
So, if I may, my background is in public relations. That's what I went to college for and got a degree in and all that good stuff. So the takeaway here would be, Travis, you're lucky. You don't have any instances happening in your store. The catch here is, what will your staff do if that ever happens? So much like we have, look, if the store catches on fire, this is what you're supposed to do. If there's a shoplifter in the store, right? I'm assuming all of us here have emergency plans and our employees are trained in these. There needs to be something in place to train your staff, to make them understand that it can happen anytime, anywhere, including our stores. And what do we do? How do we approach it, right? Because you're not there 24/7, Travis. I'm not at my store 24/7. I plan on not to be at my store 24/7. So I want to make sure that when it's open, and my customers are in there, if something happens, they're all going to take care of the issue like I would. And that's really important. I feel that a lot of stores don't think about, right? They don't have emergency plans in place for what do you do.
Yeah, that's a really good point, John, because I've definitely fallen short there, because I'm mostly there all the time, but there are sometimes I'm not. So that's a really good point. And I know how I would handle it if a sexual assault occurred in my store, but I haven't really discussed that, for example, with my staff. So I think I'm going to have a meeting sometime soon.
That's probably a good idea.
Make sure.
Codify the whole thing. Like,
you might find
it unusual. Don't make it weird. Make it just like, this is something that can happen, in the sense that, like, yeah, don't panic when there's a fire.
Yeah.
This is what you're supposed to do, because we talked about it beforehand. Whereas if you say, okay, this is what happens, this is what you are supposed to do, just follow the rules as an employee. If you see any, any sort of sexual assault happening in the store, this is how you approach it. And that way it kind of takes away the, the awkward, do I have to be the white knight here? Do I have to be the guy who interjects us? And you're just doing your job at that point. If you make it part of the operation, it might make it a lot easier for people to address it.
Yeah, and I mean, the sad reality is, as well as I think it's the stats are like there's over 90% of sexual assaults don't get reported,
right?
Because they're not a big enough deal, or they don't feel they'll be believed, or they're embarrassed. So many reasons. We got to get away from blaming the victim. We need to take responsibility for ourselves, our stores, and I think it's it's so hard for anybody who's been sexually assaulted to actually go through with pressing charges and then go through with actually winning their case. Very, very hard to actually win a case. Most cases don't go anywhere. I mean, the stats are even slimmer. So you can imagine, what's really happening out there. And, we see this tiny sliver of that reality when someone is charged with sexual assault. For that one person that actually managed to get a charge, there's going to be 100,000 that didn't, or something ridiculous like that. And we can just look to high-profile cases like John Gameshi here in Canada, who just got acquitted from sexual assault charges from various women over his career. He's got a reputation for being kind of an inappropriate, slimy type of guy, and using his power to trap women and assault them. Although he lost his high-profile job because of a sexual assault. That court is now going to court. That case is now being brought to court, and that's why these other women came out of the woodwork. That just from the case that just happened, where they're like, geez, he did these things to me, and I want to step forward. And the problem with their case was the defense lawyer just tore apart the victim's testimony, because this happened years and years ago. And when you're put through trauma, it's really hard to piece together what happened. And the stories weren't consistent, and it's too bad it all fell apart. And then you guys down in the United States, you got your Bill Cosby, who's I'm not sure how his case is going, but there's someone who had a lot of power and a lot of access to situations where he was with women, and God knows what the truth actually is, but obviously something, with the amount of women that came forward, something happened. Does anybody know what's going on with that case, or if you got charged? Or
I don't know. Well, we're coming up on the hour, so if you want to maybe offer some final thoughts on this subject, so that we can open up some stores and get ready for the day.
I think my final thoughts were just that. We don't condone it, don't allow it, and quite simply be prepared for it. That's the reality of life if these things do happen. It's not just a matter of, there's no way it's going to happen in my store. We do the best to prevent it. We do the best to provide that atmosphere that doesn't welcome it. But be prepared to know what you're going to do about it when and if it does happen. Does that make sense?
You know, I'm probably going to be talking about this in our weekly meeting with my employees. Definitely need to step things up. Sexual assault doesn't happen, but I wonder if there's instances where sexual harassment happens in the community that we can be finding and stopping. And I know that we need to step things up. I definitely need to empower them and make that part of their job, like you guys were talking about, because I don't think that that's something that we've talked about as part of their job. And so, you know, my thoughts are definitely same as when they, you know, when we started. This is, you know, it's not about when it gets this bad. It's about long before then, and we need to make things better.
Prevention over treatment, if you can. Wayne?
Yeah. Sorry, I was trying to look something up because I know that I've seen some stores certified as LGBT friendly or something. They get acknowledged officially in some capacity, and I think that's like Safe Zone is from the Gay Alliance. I've looked into. I haven't looked into. I want to look into getting some sort of certification like that, but something that's like out there and obvious, so people know that we're a safe space to come to. And yeah, I think the bottom line, you know, we all need to be vigilant, acknowledge that it's happening, that you know, the people who are experiencing sexual assault are facing an uphill battle, that we can't blame the victims. We need to do whatever we can to support them and put a stop to any behavior that we don't think is appropriate.
Perfect. And just to add my 2 cents, I think as gamers we role play as heroes and, you know, the greatest warriors and all kinds of excellent things. We should probably start acting like it as a group. And I think as the store owners, you're kind of the arbiter of this community, and we should try and make it as safe and welcoming as we can. And I think putting it out there and making it not assumed, but like actually stating it. You know, if it takes it, if it requires you to say, you know, before every tournament that this is the way things are, we're gonna make everyone happy. You know, swearing, no bullying, like just being assertive about it. I think we can do a lot to improve the situation. Okay, well, if nobody's got anything else,
I gotta go, unfortunately. So
John's got to go, and I'm sure everyone else has got to get their day started. So thanks again for coming on the show, guys. Really appreciate it. I think this was a very interesting conversation, and I hope the listeners really enjoyed it too.
All right, you guys have a great day. Okay.
All right, you two guys, take care.
See you guys later.
See ya.